Welcome back, everyone. Today, I'm going to talk about 3 very specific things that are blocking you from, and I put this in air quotes, attracting the right person and attracting love, romantic love, into your life. Number 1, you date men. So there's obviously a part of you that loves men. You're attracted to men, but you also are terrified of them and you kind of hate them. You date women and you're attracted to women, but there's a part of you that fears them, is resentful, and there's some hatred there. I know that's a strong word, but I think it's important to get really real about this. This is what I see all the time. I'm seeing it in the comments section of my Instagram and social media posts. I see it when people DM me, when people speak to me. I see it out in the wild. There is so much, all women do this and all men do that. And then you wonder why you're single or why you're not meeting that right person for you. Look, I understand how hard it can be if you've had a lot of pain in relationships, if you've been hurt, if you've had some really hard dating experiences. Certainly if you're listening to horror stories from your friends and nightmare dating stories from your friends, it's almost impossible to shield ourselves from this sort of collective fear about men and about women. And I remember, and I just told this story recently, actually, on a podcast, on someone else's podcast. I remember when I was going through my separation from my husband. This was a long time ago. This is 2014, this is ages ago. And I remember within the first 2 weeks when this happened, and I was just so gutted, and there were so many other things going on, that the way that it ended was just a major betrayal. I remember being in my local coffee shop and looking around and seeing the men in the coffee shop and feeling terrified, feeling like I was looking at the enemy. And I've never had that before. And so I share that because I understand what happens when we experience pain and how easy it can be to say, well, that's just how they are. And if you have a complicated relationship with mom or dad, it becomes even easier then to adopt these beliefs about men and about women. It's heartbreaking to me, actually. I was recently had the privilege of speaking to 2 men recently, and they're both married. And these are 2 men who respect women so much. They value women. They just love women. And I'm not talking about just romantically. They just truly see the value in a woman in every way. And being around them made me feel so comfortable and so safe. And it made me realize that part of, I think, why so many people are having a hard time dating right now is that even if we don't know it cognitively, even if we can't put language to what it is that we're feeling, even if it's not totally conscious, our bodies can feel when we are speaking with someone in the presence of someone who resents us and who doesn't like us. And I think that is weighing heavily on people's psyches when they're dating each other, which is, oh, this person probably thinks I'm this way because I'm a man, or this person probably thinks I'm this way because I'm a woman, or, you're sensing this sort of distrust from the other person. And for sometimes you might even sense this resentment. You might even sense this sort of hatred. And so how can we feel safe in the presence of the people we date if we can feel that they don't trust us? And so it's complicated. And look, there are plenty of crappy people out there. There's definitely men who behave terribly, and there are definitely women who behave terribly. But at some point, we have to tackle this in a couple of ways. One is understand who you're afraid of. So much of the gender war between men and women right now is because women fundamentally don't understand men and what it is that they need in a relationship, and men fundamentally don't understand women and what we need in a relationship. And so what we think is, well, you're so different from me, so I'm just, I'm going to just think you're crazy or there's something wrong with you. And it behooves everyone to understand what their partner needs, or what their potential partner needs. If you can have compassion for the struggles that women go through in life and in relationships, and if you can have compassion for the struggles that so many men go through in relationships, and if you can understand that every single one of us fears in some way, and there's a spectrum to this, that they are not enough, and that because they're not enough, that somehow they're going to be rejected or abandoned, and that they're going to be criticized, and that somehow they're going to be deprived of love, then you can start to have more empathy. And then if you take it a step further of what are the ways in which women collectively don't feel enough, and what are the ways in which men collectively don't feel enough? If you can have sensitivity to the fact that for women, we're constantly being told, your breasts are too big, you're too small, your body's too big or too small. If you're like over the age of 30 and you want a family, then you're desperate, or, if you don't want kids, then something's wrong with you. If you are, if you're menopausal, then you're dried up. But then if you're not menopausal, then, then you're going to want a child really fast. We're told that our feelings don't matter, that we're too emotional, when the reality is that we are more emotional. That's just how we're wired. And the beauty of that is that we are more in touch with ourselves emotionally. And there's just constant pressure. The pressure of women and age, the fact that like most women over the age of 30 think they're old, like that's mind boggling. And if forget it, if you're 40, then you're totally old. And this isn't in every culture. In many European cultures, this does not exist nearly to the extent that it exists in the United States. If women could be sensitive to the things that men go through, that he needs to be appreciated, and that he feels so much pressure to be enough and to have enough. And if he's not making the right amount of money, then women are not going to be into him. These days, there's tons of pressure on men to have a certain body and to look a certain way, a pressure that's been on men It's not quite the same that it is on women. It just isn't. I mean, it just isn't. But there still is a lot of pressure on men in a way that there hasn't been before. Um, Men have to be in touch with themselves emotionally, but then if they emote too much, then they're weak. I mean, if we can just have some empathy for what each person and what men and women need to feel loved, and empathy for the unique struggles that they have because of the fact that they're a man or a woman. And then we can start to actually get along better. This episode is brought to you by Bumble. Healing and working on ourselves and becoming more secure and loving ourselves, there's like no finish line to this. It's a path, it's a journey, it's a lifelong one. You don't have to be fully healed to love again. When you're dating, particularly on a dating app, you want to date like the person you actually want to choose and attract. You have to bring your values into how you show up on Bumble. And also know this, every connection you make is some sort of progress, whether it's a match, whether it's a boundary expressed, or just like a moment that you have of clarity. These are all really important things to take note of. So make sure that you download Bumble today at bumble.com/onlove. If you've had really hard experiences and heartbreak, it doesn't mean that, what your ex did to you or what your past date did to you represents the entire species. And, like, especially if we've been hurt, we have to be able to see our role in whatever was not working. Like, we are responsible for the choices that we make in partners. We are. And of course, there's lots of different things that go into it, and childhood is part of it, but we ultimately have to be responsible for that. And so if you've had a series of relationships with people who've hurt you, you've got to be able to see, as it begins with you, where your pattern is in all of this. It's not that every guy is a narcissist. It's not that every woman is selfish. It's just that you are choosing certain people and are attracted to certain dynamics. And so part of healing that, yeah, I love you, but I also resent you and I'm afraid of you, and therefore I don't trust you. You have to investigate where that comes from and to start to challenge any stories you have around it. And you have to protect yourself from your friends who are having one bad experience after the other. There are really good people out there. And like I said, there are people who are really not great. But the more that you can take responsibility, the more that you can give good people a chance, the more that you work on saying what it is that you need in a relationship, and you're open, honest, and communication, the more you're going to be drawn to, and the more that you are going to draw the right people to you. And that's just fact. I see it happen all the time. And I've experienced it in my own life. So first, it's just get in touch with that deep wound, if you will, that unconscious wound of distrust. Acknowledge how influenced we all are by society and social media and gender wars right now, and start to think more critically about this. And like I said, have that empathy and that compassion, which I think is really tragically missing from the whole conversation and tragically missing from relationships right now. Number 2, you don't believe that you could actually sustain a healthy relationship. You might be someone who gets a lot of dates. You might be someone who gets a lot of attention, but you don't actually believe that once you're in the relationship, you will be able to function inside of it. You won't be able to actually make a relationship work. You've lost faith in your ability to be in a relationship. It's a tough one for people to come to terms with and to really face. And I think that way more people than we can even imagine are walking around with this fear. And so if you believe that even on a deep unconscious level, then you are going to equate being in a relationship with pain. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. We tend to turn to some funny places for support, but not everyone is a therapist. Not everyone is the one. You have to find your right match with BetterHelp. And, we've done it before. We turn to our hairdresser, a friend or the random stranger, or, some people turn to their barista. And as fun as they are to talk about everyday topics, when you're looking for help about your relationships, anxiety, depression, or other important big issues, these people may not have the right answers. So instead, get guidance from a licensed therapist online with BetterHelp. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Find the one with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/onlove. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/onlove. Every single one of us has our work cut out for us when it comes to being in a relationship, because being in a relationship means that we have to overcome our pride. It means that we have to be way more selfless and way less selfish. It means that we have to overcome certain fears. For a lot of people, it's about learning how to speak up in the relationship. That's very true of women, but it's also true of some men. A lot of people don't really understand what emotional intimacy is. And, maybe your fear is that you're going to be engulfed by the relationship. People are either fearing that they're going to lose themselves in a relationship or they're going to be abandoned, right? And so you're just thinking, well, I have this attachment style and, I'm going to be in the relationship and I'm going to mess it all up. And, these are all really valid concerns. And then you might think you want a relationship, but somehow you don't really believe in your ability to have a healthy one. And look, it's hard to address that. I mean, the reality is this. Yes, we all have to do our work and reflect on the ways, whether you're in a relationship or not, we have to reflect on the ways in which we can be better partners, how we could have higher self-esteem, to communicate rather than suppress our needs, to be better listeners. We all have to do that. And we all have to look back at our relationships that didn't work and think, why didn't it work? And it's a combination of who we chose and how we showed up, always. And one is kind of leaning, every circumstance is different. For some people, it's more about who they choose. Other people, it's more how they showed up. Every relationship is different. Like I said, every circumstance is different. At some point, you just have to kind of take the risk and learn the lessons. I think that we are at a much higher risk of sabotaging a relationship or not being able to sustain a relationship for the long term if we don't have some sort of working understanding of what went wrong in the past and the things that we have to just be conscious of, mindful of when we're in a relationship, like what your conflict style is, what you tend to do that hasn't worked in the past. And we're all sort of in it together. And maybe it's just a matter of just telling yourself, oh yeah, I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to sustain this. I'm afraid that I'm not good enough to sustain it. And none of it is actually true as long as you have an awareness of what it is that you need to work on, as long as you can bring some level of vulnerability and transparency and honesty to a relationship. Those are like really the building blocks. If like someone can really feel comfortable being themselves with you and you can feel comfortable being yourself with them, if you are both willing to take constructive feedback from each other, if you're willing to roll up your sleeves when there's a problem and get to the bottom of it, these are sort of like the basics of healthy partnership. And everything else is just a matter of you knowing, like I said, what you struggle with most and going into a relationship committed to working on that. And no one is perfect, but do acknowledge if that's the thing that's holding you back. And I really believe that just by acknowledging it, you can start to release it and let it go. But as long as it's in your unconscious, it has a really sneaky way of controlling our behavior and our decisions. And if you're into energy and manifestation, then you know what? I think there's a strong argument for how it might be impacting your energy and quote unquote manifestations. Okay, so another way that you could be blocking real healthy love, the kind of love that you deserve and that we all crave in your life, is that you are wasting your time with the wrong people. Sometimes you have to walk away from the person you care about in order to meet the person who cares about you. And the longer we spend in relationships that are completely wrong and where our nervous system is in this chronic state of alert inside of the relationship, and we don't feel good about ourselves inside of the relationship, or we're with someone and we want completely different things, then the longer it's going to take for you to actually be in a relationship where you can build with someone that feels overall nourishing to your nervous system, that where you have more happiness than you do suffering, right? So the longer you spend in the wrong relationship, the longer it's going to take for you to actually meet the person who's right for you. And that is a tough pill to swallow, but it is a very, very important one, because people do waste a lot of time and energy in relationships that are bringing them a profound amount of misery. And no relationship is happy all the time, and no relationship is perfect. But it's not supposed to be this ongoing unhappiness. That's just not how it's supposed to be in a relationship. This episode is sponsored by O Positive. O Positive is a women's health company. They offer a range of symptom-targeting supplements that support women at every stage of her life, from her first period to well beyond her last. And they're very proud to have the best-selling women's health products at Target and on Amazon. In fact, Uro, which is their vaginal probiotics, is one of the top 5 supplements ever on Amazon. And they have multiple #1 products in Target for intimate care, PMS, and menopause categories. They're amazing. They create real, tangible results with ingredients that are backed by clinical studies and shaped by board-certified doctors. Uro is a probiotic blend specifically formulated to support vaginal health. And we know, ladies, many factors, sex, tight clothing, periods, hormonal imbalance, all these things, stress just can mess up our flora. When taken, 2 capsules a day delivers noticeable benefits within 8 weeks, and some see it sooner. So take proactive care of your health and head to opositive.com/JOL or enter JOL at checkout for 25% off your first purchase. That's opositiv.com/JOL for 25% off. So it's important to understand that healthy adult love isn't meant to make you miserable. And I think that this is something that a lot of us don't really quite understand. At what point are we working for a relationship versus sacrificing our entire well-being for the wrong relationship? And something that many people, I know also, I think that this comes a lot with good girl conditioning, but I also think that this comes with sort of good boy conditioning, which is we teach children young, like, and especially girls, but again, this does apply to some boys and men, to tolerate being absolutely miserable in a relationship because you're just supposed to be good. And, or they're just people who have such a large degree of empathy or compassion, or we're told to be very empathetic and compassionate, that we tolerate absolute abuse. Lots of people write into me their stories, and you might be listening to this right now and have written to me and told me your story. And there's two in particular that are incredibly important to this part of my point of this podcast, which is, one person wrote in and she is in a relationship with a man. She's not dependent on him financially. She doesn't have kids with him. So she's not in this because she has to be in it, which is the case for a lot of people. You know, they can't leave something bad because they don't actually have the financial or the emotional support to leave. And it's very, very difficult. And I just feel that it's important to acknowledge that. But this is someone who can leave if she wanted to. And she shared this story that, recently she got into an argument with her partner, and then he went to bed and she came into bed later and like sat at the edge of the bed, and he was annoyed that she wanted to talk more about everything. And, sure, was not the greatest timing. I would definitely tell her not to bring it up when someone's sleeping, but she certainly didn't deserve to be kicked for it. And he physically kicked her so hard that she fell off the bed. And apparently this was the second time that he had done something like this. And he says, I'm going to get help, or, it's just because I, woke up and I didn't know what I was doing, all these excuses. And she's sharing with me that she feels this feeling that I am familiar with, which is like this soul deep pain of remembering that feeling of picking yourself up off the floor after someone who you care about has been violent towards you. And it's a profound sadness. And yet she's still grappling with whether or not she should forgive him or she should leave. Like, she literally does not know this. And it breaks my heart because there are millions of people in this kind of position. And so for any of you who know someone, or you've been in a situation where someone has been physically rough or violent with you, there are no second chances. You have to do whatever it takes to get out. And if you have the privilege of being able to just leave because you know that if you leave, it's not the extreme amount of violence where someone's going to come after you. You need police support, or you have the privilege of having the finances to be able to leave. Leave and never look back. Block that person, or just go to therapy 4 days a week if you have to. But you just never, ever want to tolerate that. And so much of that comes from, and for the men who are listening right now, and certainly there are men who tolerate a tremendous amount of abuse. There are gay men who tolerate a lot of physical violence. I would say that a lot of men who are in relationships with women, Less so physical violence, not that it doesn't happen, but let's call it what it is. Of course, that doesn't happen as much, but certainly emotional violence and manipulation. So this is not me saying, women get this more, but the conditioning that happens with women and girls is this high degree of empathy and to feel sorry for the person who's hurting us, to the degree that we can't set the boundary to say, you know what, I can have compassion for you, but you have to get the hell out of my life. And this is something that we just as people in general, because, you might, for the women who you love in your life, or if you are a woman, like, this is something that we have to work very hard not to give into. You can care about someone and make it so that they lose access to you. This episode is sponsored by Timeline. Like, if you're someone who's tried all the health trends, but you're still feeling tired, or you've got foggy or just off, you're not alone. Because you have to go deeper, way deeper, because true health actually starts in our cells. It starts with our mitochondria. And if you're hitting a plateau with your workouts, or you're just like, I don't know, like sometimes I feel like my recovery is not as great, like I get really sore, then the secret is actually not in your training, it's in your cells. The truth is, our body makes less energy as we get older, but now you can help recharge the batteries. And that is with Timeline. So if you want to stay strong and energized now as you age, then you have to try Mito Pure gummies. I love them. Truly love them. My friends at Timeline are offering 20% off just for my listeners. So head to timeline.com/JOL to get started. That's timeline.com/JOL. Your cells will thank you. And I'm telling you, they are the best. And then I had someone else write in, and this is a completely different person. This is someone with great self-esteem. She's highly accomplished. She's has a great career. She's a mom. She's a marathon runner. Like, she has a lot of confidence in herself in many ways, but there's somewhere there's a disconnect for her about what is tolerable in a relationship versus not. And that comes from, how we were raised. It comes from, cultural conditioning. It comes from just not having the experience to know what it's like to be treated well in a relationship. And, it's just, he's telling her, I don't see you enough. So that's why I have to keep seeing my ex-girlfriend or sleeping with her. Something absolutely insane. And, that's why I feel so passionate about this episode, which is, this third point, which is that there is a difference between the work that goes into a relationship and being a mature, healthy adult and saying, you know what, there are things that I need to change in order to be a better partner. And, and not just focusing on the other person being a better partner, taking that level of accountability, recognizing that a relationship is going to challenge you and to overcome your pride, to overcome your ego, to be more vulnerable, for some of you, approach conflict differently than the way you've approached it in the past. It's going to really challenge some of us to the core. And there's a difference between that and working really hard for relationships where you are just disrespected. Working really hard for relationships where people are, where you can feel in your body, like, this is just not right. This feels terrible. Because a relationship does take work. It does take some challenge, but healthy love is not this ongoing tolerance of misery. It just isn't. And that's when we really have to check in with ourselves and say, I know that it's not supposed to be this way. You're not supposed to feel this soul deep sadness, this emptiness, this lack of trust in your partner, this this consistent anxiety about whether or not they're like seeing other people or speaking to other people who they shouldn't be speaking to. It's not supposed to be that way. And yes, we have to all take responsibility for what we do and do not tolerate. We all have to take 100% responsibility for how we show up and how we don't show up. All that is true. And it is also true that you have to know when to walk away from unhealthy circumstances. And then maybe you have to do the work to understand, why do I tolerate this? Like, where is my, I'm lacking in some sort of relational intelligence to recognize that this is not right. Or I'm lacking in some sort of self-worth or self-esteem, or just something is, I have to work on this so that I never again find myself in this scenario again, or I never again co-create this kind of scenario with someone else again. So the accountability part is huge, but it does not change the fact that ultimately we are never going to get the love that we want if we are looking for love in all the wrong people. And way too many people give their power away to relationships or connections where they feel miserable, where there is an unrequited love, where someone is just not investing at the level that you're investing in, and that's where we have to be brave and just say, you know what, this is just not going to work. This is not right. This doesn't feel good. And you have to trust that you will be okay. There is a relationship is not meant to be like this massive sacrifice of your well-being. And it's supposed to add to your well-being. And sure, you'll go through periods of time where it might be really difficult, and you make the decision and you say, I love this person and I see my role in what's not working and I want to work on this. But again, and I will keep reiterating this, it is not supposed to be a relationship. Healthy adult relationships do not require sacrifices of our well-being and of our sense of self. So anyway, I hope this episode helps. I've been reading all your messages, so please do not hesitate to reach out at hello@jillianonlove.com. And don't forget, if you are watching this on YouTube, to hit the subscribe button, because this is what keeps us going. And please do not hesitate to share this episode with someone who you think could really benefit from it, because you never know whose life you could be changing by just sharing this episode. So until next time, thanks for listening. Jillian on Love is a QCODE production, executive produced by David Henning and Steve Wilson, produced and edited by Travis Howe, music by Will Tendy.